All right, in today's video, we're gonna talk about 5 big driver do's and don'ts to help you not only drive it farther, but also straighter. We're gonna look at spine tilt. We're gonna look at shaft lean, lead shoulder movement, what recentering will do for you, and then of course the release. All right, so we're gonna take a look at our first 2 don'ts. All right, so these are movements that you want to avoid, and it's gonna do with spine tilt. So we see 2 issues where the spine tilt gets off the rails. One at setup, one at the top of the swing.
Right, so
Or
the first,
actually in transition.
exactly. So the first one's at setup. So, you know, everybody's heard play the ball forward. So
Right.
a good rule of thumb, just kind of up the left heel,
Okay.
the opposite the left heel. The problem with that is for a lot of golfers, when they do that, we call it facing the ball. They're used to having their torso kind of at the ball.
So you're used to, it'd be easy if you set up with the driver. This wouldn't be a problem if the ball was there more middle. Right?
Yeah, so your shoulders would essentially be square at that
So
point.
we're gonna move the ball forward.
Yeah, so then from there, they face the ball. So
Right.
that just means they turn the whole body that way. That kicks the right hip high, opens the body up, and tilts the spine to the left a little bit.
Golfers will do this without ever realizing they do it. Again, another reason why it's super valuable to record your golf swing, especially when you practice, because you'll pick up on these, they can be really swing killers, and it's something as easy as just being aware of it to fix it.
Yeah, you can really, it's nearly impossible to hit a good shot from there.
So a lot of it has to do too with the idea of getting the hands in front of the ball. Like I think a lot of players are under the assumption that you know, we set up like this with a 7-iron, but if I set up like this with a driver where the shaft is actually leaning away, that's somehow a swing fault.
They get really confused about that. So basically your hands, if you just think of your hands staying kind of mid-body,
Right.
just like if I clap my hands together, let the club go where it's gonna go. The shaft with the driver will actually angle back a little bit.
That's for most players, yeah.
The best drivers in the world, clubs pointed at their belt buckle.
All right, so that's address. Let's talk about now what a lot of golfers do with the shoulder, or excuse me, the spine tilt coming out of the top of the swing.
Okay, so swing up, as you swing up to the top, the spine's gonna be pretty vertical. It might be leaned away just a little bit when you're looking at it on video. Everybody now understands, they should at least, that it's optimal to hit up a little on the driver.
Right.
So you wanna max things out, right? Distance, height, lower spin rate.
Right.
And what they'll do, instead of kind of doing it by shallowing the arms out and making a nice pivot, they'll just get up here and say, I gotta hit up on it. So they'll start tilting this spine angle way back, slamming it back. Club gets too behind them. They'll hit a lot of drop kicks and cause a lot of mishit shots like pushes and hooks.
A lot of into outers, right?
Yeah.
Massive into outs. Or some players have told us they do it because they've always been steep and steep and steep. And you know, you're used to coming out steep, steep, steep with a driver, that's tough. So they've just figured, okay, I can make the club not be steep by just tilting, but you give up a lot to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. So your arms are gonna feel like they lower down this way, and then you can add the rotation in with the body. You can hit up on it that way instead of just slamming this spine hard to the right.
And a good drill for this is just take yourself up to the top and stop about halfway. You should feel pretty level shoulders by here, even with the driver. Get my ball positions forward so I don't have to tilt to get behind it. So if I can come up to the top, boom, about right here, I'm good. If I do this and I feel that, I'm probably gonna be in trouble.
Yeah,
so it's
do
a
that.
good checkpoint.
Do that good one again. So what I'm seeing here from down the line, I'm making sure that the club's not tipped outside the
Right,
hands.
so I didn't go this way with it.
Right, that's a learned thing. You know, you have to lower that down as you're turning and let the club head be a little behind your hands. That lets it get kind of low to high, which is a good feeling when you're trying to hit up on it.
So we get a lot of golfers coming to us wanting to increase their shaft lean with their irons. A lot of them will try to do it with the driver, but that's not the case. This is a club we want to pretty much line up and have vertical when it's actually contacting the ball.
Yeah, it's got the least amount of loft, right? So you're trying to launch the ball up in the air and hit up. So the worst thing you can do is get your hands way in front of the ball here because you got a double whammy. That's going to cause a downward hit normally, and also takes all the loft off the club.
Well, you'll de-loft it. You'll open the face when that happens. That's probably one of the biggest things we see.
Yeah, I mean, if you just, in a vacuum, if I shove my hands forward, that club's off to the right.
None of those we want.
No,
we don't want it de-lofted, and we don't want to take the face and open it up coming into the ball.
I had this problem for a while. I had a lot of blocks with a driver like this. It's very difficult to manage it.
So what do we want to do instead? We want to line it up. So
Right.
what does that mean?
So if I'm set up like this, you know, the ball's way up off my left instep. The setup is the club back at my belt buckle. When I add the little bit of hip shift, let the right knee come in so I'm open, that puts me where the driver's gonna be right there.
Okay, and a good visual for this, if you can get a box at home or a wall, couch, whatever you have, you can replace that, place the golf ball with this wall. We get it pretty square. So now Shaun's got a reference point of where vertical is for that shaft.
Yeah, I like this kind of training. I just feel like it gives you such a good visuals, like, okay, I'm gonna set the club here. Now let me figure out what I gotta do with my body to make that happen. I would never be way over here.
Right.
I can't do it if I'm back here. So it gets your brain oriented in the right place, or your mind in the right place to figure out where this club and body needs to be.
And you kind of line up the whole left side of the body. It's pretty like a solid base here. You've heard hitting against the firm left side. It's really evident with the driver. It should be.
Absolutely.
All right, so that's number 2. Is our second don't is we don't want to have a lot of shaft lean. You'll see guys, maybe 1, sometimes 2 if it's extreme, who can really drive it, but most of the time you're going to see pretty vertical shafts coming into impact. So our first do with the driver is to make sure that your lead shoulder, your left shoulder if you're right-handed, is moving across you in the backswing. It's uncomfortable for a lot of golfers to think the ball's already up, I'm going to actually get my shoulder moving away from the ball, and a lot of players will just kind of keep the shoulder here, hang out, and kind of tilt turn to get to the top.
Exactly.
Not a good idea.
No, so if I'm set up here with the ball, let's see, it's out my left instep, I've got to let my left shoulder move across my body behind the ball. So if I did this right here, and we'll grab this ball real quick. If I put that ball here, it's opposite my left instep. If I make a backswing, I've got my shoulder well behind the ball at the top.
And it should be the easiest to do with this club.
Way easier up here just to let that thing come across. When you're bent over a little more, it can feel a little bit more awkward, but up here, just let that thing sweep across. That gets you in a good spot to do all the other good stuff and allows you to come from the inside and hit up on the ball side.
And again, I don't have to tilt my spine this way to have side tilt. Again, it's just a reference, frame of reference. This is side tilt, just turning 90 degrees to my spine. Again, that allows me a greater range of motion for moving this shoulder across me. Whereas tilting is kind of more difficult to do, and it'll kind of take your breath away when you try it. But getting your shoulder behind that golf ball early, not at the top, but early, will be a big deal for helping you hit the driver farther. So our second do, something that you absolutely want to do with the driver as well as the other clubs in your bag, is something we started talking about. We kind of coined the term several years ago, and it's this recentering. You want to make sure you're back to the center with pretty much every club in your bag.
Yeah, by the top of the swing, right?
Right.
So all that means is, as you make your backswing, first part of your backswing shift is going to be done about right here.
Right.
This is as far right as your body is ever going to be. As the club finishes its way to the top and you're continuing to turn, as it finishes up here, I'm just going to go back myself into where I started. Now I'm still turned, but I've got my body positioned back in the middle again, not to the right.
And it's a very subtle movement once you actually start putting it into practice. So it's a through that line and back right there. That's recentering. I haven't done it with my upper body. I haven't thrown my lower body. It's just literally right there, and then I'm done. And it's a backswing move.
It is. Recentering is in the backswing. There, I'm done. It's in the backswing. I think the pitfalls we see, people try to do it with the upper because I think that's kind of a diving in move. That's a kiss of death with the driver because that's a steepening move,
Right.
that move there.
Or we'll see it happen, and this is one of the skills in the golf swing in general, is to be able to move laterally as I'm still rotating the opposite way. So I can recenter as I'm still turning closed. That's what you see the best players in the world do.
It's a magic
They'll finish
move for
that
golf,
rotation as they fall back to the middle. What most players we see on the lesson tee do, any movement forward triggers downswing rotation. And if you can separate those two in your brain and put it in practice, you're going to see a big difference.
It's like a magic move.
Right.
This being able to move back toward the target while you're still turning in the backwards direction, if you can figure that out, it goes a long ways towards getting better.
And that's why we like using, this is our Sheftik board, we like using these training aids a lot because it allows you to feel what's happening. So I'll demonstrate that for you. It's a click here, so you're going to start the front, click the back, and then boom. I'm off my trail side, and I'm doing it primarily getting off of this foot. So I'm not doing it by throwing my mass forward. Just going here, boom, I've recentered. It's literally that simple. So if you got one of these boards, buy one, make one, whatever you got to do. Teach yourself how to do that because that's really going to help, not just your driver, but every club in your bag. So one of the most common questions we get in lessons is like, how do I release the driver? You know, like it's a mystical area of the golf swing for a lot of guys.
It happens so fast.
It happens so fast. What's a flip? What's a release? You know, when does the two start to, when is one bad? When is one good? Really, you want to understand this so you can start to apply it to your golf swing.
Yeah, I mean, we try to keep things very simple because it's happening so fast. You can't be thinking a lot of complicated things through here anyways,
Well,
right?
you're not going to do anything about it down there.
You know, the best tip I've heard, and I've heard it for a long time, but it was reiterated. Tiger Woods had a book, How I Play Golf,
Right.
a long time ago. He said that was one of the best tips he ever got from Butch. Was this tip here was he wanted him to feel like he was shaking hands with the target. So simple, but if you haven't thought about it like that before, it's going to help you a lot. Because, you know, at this point in the swing right here, I'm shaking hands with someone on the right side of my body, like my trail side, right? So this way to the camera. Well, as I come through, if I think about shaking hands with somebody on this side, as I move my trail hip through and tuck my rear end under, that's the release. So that takes the club from where it is here, squares through the ball, and then kind of freewheels up the other side.
That's it. So the handshake is right out here in front of you,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, it is. It's out that way. So as I'm doing that, that club is in the act of squaring as it comes through so that you don't leave it wide open. If you've been trying to hold the release in some attempt to kind of keep the face square to the path or something, that almost always leads to a wide open club face. So this thing needs to be kind of slinging through here. Shaking hands over here is a great way to think about it.
It's funny you showed that because we do see a lot of players who tell us their idea of the release is kind of keeping all of this parallel to my chest and coming through like that. And that doesn't happen with any club in the bag, but it will kill trying to do it with this club because you just will not get this face square. So trying to avoid doing this release, I just don't see the benefit in that when you look at every player who can drive the ball, they all have this release.
That's right.
And it's how you square the face. Again, we're trying to line this thing up. We're not trying to lean it. So that's got to be, these angles have got to be released.
Coming out.
They've got to be
great,
released.
What a revelation.
They've got to be released for you to actually release the driver. It'll square it up, get the proper loft on it, so you can get that positive angle of attack, hit it not only straight down the fairway, but a long ways down the fairway.